Well, what is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to A Therapeutic Edge. On the table in front of us today, we have, obviously, a Medford. Now, this one came to me by way of Kyle Lanphere, who was nice enough to hand it off into the pass-around group, and it landed with me. So I thought we would take a look at it together. Now, I'm not a huge Medford fan at all. I've had a couple. They're just generally not the knives for me, but this one, well, this one is pretty sweet. This is the 187, and this is just an excellent monster. Look at that thing. That thing is an absolute beast. Now, you guys know, I mean, you should know by this point, that I love big knives, and this absolutely qualifies. It is just a tank. What do you guys think? This happens to be in S90V. It is all titanium. It has the Medford pivots, so I will not be taking this apart to look at the insides, and that is okay, as it's not my knife. It comes in the traditional Medford box, which is very cool. Let's take a look at what you get. Well, as I mentioned, you get S90V. You get giant slab-sided scales in titanium. You get a very nice pocket clip with good spring and good ramp. It is well, it's huge. I honestly didn't know. It's got a really nice forward choil. It is hollow ground, which is a very nice touch as well. It's not exceptionally comfortable. Now, part of that, you guys know, again, I love big knives, but this thing isn't really knocked down at all. The edges, they're not sharp, but there's no shaping to them either. It is just very, very slab-sided, and that is cool if you're into that sort of thing. It has some jimping down here to catch your pinky, so that it locks in, but no jimping along here, and just some very light jimping up here at the top of the blade. But I will say that it is in exactly the right spot, which is a nice touch. As many knives seem to miss that spot, and you end up with jimping that's either too far back or too far forward, this is very well done. It has no flipper. The only way to deploy this knife is with this hole, and you can very comfortably spidey flick it or just sort of roll it out. It is nice in either way. While most Medfords, excuse me, aren't really for me, this one could be. Because of its size and its sort of straightforward design, I dig it. I really do. It's got it's open construction with these wonderful barrel spacers down here and through the body, which is very, very nice. As you can see right through it very easily. It's a big boy, as I've mentioned a few times, and I like that. I'm not gonna lie, I don't get the Medford appeal. It doesn't mean I think they're bad knives. In fact, the few that I've had and the few that I've held have all been made extremely well. I know that whoever he's got in his factory making these knives is doing a superior job, but they just don't jump out at me for my collection and my purposes, and that's okay. Not every knife is for every person. In fact, something I am very fond of saying, particularly on Instagram, where people can be very knife judgy, is that that's the wonderful thing about knives, is there's something for everyone, and no one is wrong. In other words, if you love a thing, good for you. That's awesome. Just because I don't necessarily love it doesn't mean that I am against you and your stuff. It just means that we have different taste in knives. And I think that, again, is one of my favorite parts about this collection. If all knives were the same, if everybody liked the same thing, it would be really boring. So let's get some specs out of the way on this monster. The blade, again in S90V, which is really very nice, is 1, 2, 3, little over 3.5 inches of cutting on 1, 2, 3, 4 1/8 inches overall in length. The grip area from right here, which is the natural grip point, is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3/4 inches long. If you add in that choil, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 3/4 inches. So it is a lot of reach and grip area. This is, as I have said a couple of times, okay, every few minutes. I got to tell you, I didn't know it was this big. You know, I've had a couple of Praetorians come through here, and I've had various other knives. They tend to be a little more compact. This is just long and lean, which is a really interesting design choice coming from Medford. It's not what I expected. The overall knife is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, almost 9.5 inches long. This is great. The pivot is anode blue and bronze. The scales are anode bronze, and the pocket clip, and this looks like heat anode, has been anode out sort of blue into the purple range to give it just a little bit of pop. The blade is all blacked out, as you can see. There is the Medford logo, and the 9, which of course in Medford language means S90V. Let's do some size comparisons just for giggles. There it is up against the PM2, and as you can see, it is much, much larger than the PM2. And we'll put the PM3 down here on the bottom. Yep, this is a big boy. If we line up the pivots, this is a lot of knife. Something that keeps drawing me back to it, even though I'm not particularly a Medford fan. I am kind of a fan of this monster. The pocket clip I mentioned earlier, which is very nice, is not what you would call deep carry. When you have this thing in your pocket, you have a little over, yeah, just add 1 inch of knife sticking up out of the pocket, which is fine. A knife this long gives you something to grab onto when you're drawing it out. The action, which is, I'm guessing, on phosphor bronze or copper, I'm not sure, is very smooth. It is. It's not drop shut, but it is very, very smooth. These are about $500, which is a significant amount of money for a knife. For $500, you can get a Medford, or you can get any number of Hinderers, or you can get a Chris Reeve Sebenza, or you can get yourself, you know, something in the range of a older custom Hoback. That is a significant amount of money to spend on a knife. So my suggestion is, before you drop that kind of money on a knife, make sure you get a chance to get it in hand, right? Play with it a little bit first. Find someone who's got one, borrow one, go somewhere where they have them, go to a show, see if you can get your hands on one, because for that kind of investment, you want to make sure that it is the right knife for you. Now, of all the Medfords I've ever held, and I've held a lot of them, this is the closest to one that I would really want in the collection. Now, of course, you guys know me. I would want plain titanium and a clean blade. But the overall shape and dimensions of this thing put it right in my wheelhouse. And the fact that it's hollow ground makes me really happy. I haven't done a lot with it because it is a loaner. I'm not going to take it out and beat it up for that very reason. But I have, of course, cut some things with it, and I got to tell you, all Medford knives cut. They do a good job. This is the sliciest Medford I've ever had. It really is. It comes down to a very nice edge, and they did the hollow grind very, very well. So it moves through whatever media you're cutting very smoothly and very easily. Recently, also from Kyle Lanphere, I had the Cheburkov Bear, and that knife is within $100 or so of being, or a little more, but being very similar to this one in size. I would have that before I'd have this, just because I thought that knife was, I don't know, just a little more interesting. But if you are determined to get a Medford, which is awesome, I hope you do if you want one, and you're looking for something that is not quite as enormous and yet manages still to be a really big knife, the 187 here might be a really good option for you. I know that if one was to appear in the right color combination and setup, I might pick it up. And that's coming from a person who doesn't really love Medfords. I still might get one because it has shown itself to be an excellent cutting tool. And for my hand size, which again, I have really big hands, this thing is comfortable and interesting. It's not, I don't know how to explain this. If these were knocked down just a little more, right? I mean, look how thick that is. This thing is a tank. It would be a little more comfortable in hand for hard, regular use. If you were wearing gloves, this thing would be perfect. But as it is, it's a little blocky even for me. But still, of all the Medfords I've held, I think this is probably my favorite. I really do. Speaking of how thick it is, let's go ahead and measure it out so that we know what we're talking about here. All right. You get almost 5 millimeters of S90V. I don't know if you guys can see that. There we go. Through the handle, we are at 15.6 millimeters, which works out to be 0.61, so a little over half an inch through the handle. Its closed length is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a quarter inches long. Yeah, it is over a half. Man, this is just a this thing is a hoot. Now the barrel spacers mean that you've got screws coming in from either side, which means that they screw into the barrel spacers instead of into the titanium, and that is a really nice touch. Whereas on, for instance, that Hoback that I showed you, the screws go right into the titanium. On a knife like this, you can take it apart if you've got Medford's proprietary pivot tool, which I do not like proprietary pivots at all. I know Medford's not a huge fan of people taking his knives apart, but if I'm going to own it, I'm going to field strip it, I'm going to clean it, I'm going to put it back together. It's just the way I roll. So I would end up having to get one of those tools or find a substitute. But if you had one and you wanted to take this apart, you wouldn't have to worry about stripping out the titanium on either side, which is a really nice touch. I don't know. Well, that's interesting. It has a serial number, 89026, stamped actually on both sides, which is kind of funky, but cool. And it matches the blade. So if you happen to have one of these and you don't have matching serial numbers all the way around, you would know that somebody had either built some sort of a Frankenstein version, sorry about that, Kyle, version of one of these, or something else was seriously wrong. But in this case, everything matches up lovely. I love these big stop pins in the blade. I love the way they snap home up against these scales. I love the way this thing sounds when it opens. That is such a great noise. So I learned something today, and in the time that I've had this. While, as I've mentioned numerous times in this video, I'm not really a Medford person, there are Medfords that appeal to me. I think that's awesome. Thank you so much, Kyle, for this look. Let's go ahead and weigh it before we move it out of here. I am curious. Although, to be fair, I'm not really sure weight matters on something like this. All right. 8.1 ounces. Well, that puts it in the same range as the Hinderer XM24. And it's a little more expensive, but actually about the same price as the XM24. And it puts it within, what are we looking at? 1.9 ounces of the cold steel Formax. And it is sized appropriately. I'm not really sure what my point is on this video. And what I mean by that is this. Usually I either recommend a knife or don't. I can't do that in this case. I don't recommend this knife because it's not one that I would deliberately go out and find. But if you like it, as a reviewer and someone who has a lot of experience with knives, I can tell you that it is really well made. Fit and finish is really good. This one's clearly had a lot of pocket time, and it's held up very well. The geometry of the knife makes a lot of sense. It's just a good knife overall. So if you're interested in one, and you're wondering if somebody out there is going to say, yeah, go grab one, go grab one. Okay, thank you so much, Kyle, for letting us look at this here in the Apex Pass Around group, hashtag Apex Pass Around group. I'm going to go ahead and end this here. If you have any questions about the Medford 187 or any of the knives on my channel, feel free to ask down in the comments below. It was good to have you here tonight. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.